Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Ewood Park. Not that you can tell, given it's not the most glamorous backdrop we've ever used in our life, but we are here in the press box as we look out to the pitch. Norwich City's players, a few of them just taking in the surroundings, and always a nice playing surface here, isn't it, Pad, as well? Or that seems to be the message. So we will, of course, bring you the team news in the next minute or so when it drops. And, of course, it's going to be very interesting to see how Norwich line up after what was ultimately a defeat last weekend. And, in fact, we can bring that to you now. So here is how they line up. It's Kovacevic in goal. We're expecting a back four of Fisher, Medic, Darling and Krizene. It will be Topic and McLean as the midfield two. Sienats on the right, Diallo on the left with Chris Goran and Josh Sargent up front. The subs bench is Grimshaw, Cordoba, Schlupp, McConville, Gibbs, Matson, Jurasek, Marcondes and Makama. So just to run you through that again, Norwich City in what we are expecting to be a flexible 4-4-2 shape. Here's Kovacevic in goal, Fisher, Medic, Darling and Krizene as a back four, Topic and captain Kenny McLean as the midfield two, Sienats on the right, Diallo on the left with Chris Garden and Sargent up front. The subs bench, Grimshaw, Cordoba, Schlupp, McConville, Gibbs, new signing Pella Matson, Mate Jurasek, Emi Marcondes and Jovan Makama. Paddy, good afternoon, first and foremost, and your thoughts and feelings on that Norwich City starting 11.
Well, two things. Chris Garden in, excellent. Secondly, that 11, and also what's been communicated to us suggests it's a 4 at the back. But I think the reality is, as we discussed on the walk up from the press room to here, the press box, is it'll probably slip into that 3 and 2 wider elements. So let's not get too hung up on that. But at kick-off, that would appear to be fullbacks in Fisher and Krizene. Good to see him back in. I don't really think Cordoba has done enough to certainly warrant that he keeps his place in the side. Now Krizene is fit, available, and is showing some good signs in his cameos. Happy with that. And then what I really like about this shape, even if it does revert maybe, is that it's Medic in the middle of the 4 alongside Darling. I think it's palpably obvious at this stage that isolated in wider areas, that's not really his game. The pace, lack of, is getting exposed too often. So a bit like Portsmouth playing in almost the width for the 18-yard box, I think that makes far more sense at this stage. And Darling is the constant, of course, and he's been excellent in this start to the season, albeit the results and the performances more broadly have been patchy, but he's been a very consistent performer. So there's a lot to like there. McLean coming back in, I think we probably felt on the Instagram Live he'd go that way with Topic. But Matson on the bench is the first signal that the post-Nunes world is upon us now. So that's good to see. But yeah, and then as I referenced at the start, Chris Garden, it feels like now needs to be in this starting 11, needs to be in and around Sargent, needs to be offering that support at threat level in the box that hitherto has just been totally on the shoulders of and the boots of Josh Sargent. And as we again said on the Instagram this morning, Cern actually has another opportunity. Maybe it's a slightly different role. Maybe it's a role he's more accustomed to that he played under Torop last season. If he's asked to patrol that right-hand side with Fisher, that might give him a little bit more familiarity, because I don't think he's looked comfortable being asked to play in those pockets thus far. So all in all, time will tell, of course, but on paper that feels a better balance, a better blend. But they need to now translate that into performances on the pitch. What do you think, Connor, when you see that at 11?
Looks more balanced, doesn't it? It looks like a lot more players in the positions that you would want them to be in to get the best out of them. I think that right side will help Antti Sienats, and obviously the options in front of him maybe being in a bit more of a natural area to what he's used to. Left side as well, just freeing Diallo up to actually go and attack, go and get at your man without worrying about tracking back. I think that's a positive aspect as well. I think you mentioned Medic. I would expect him to, famous last words, but I would expect him to look and feel a bit more comfortable in the back four at this moment in time, given the struggles. And I think we've seen as well opposition try and get in behind him quite frequently in that back three. Good opportunity for Krizene. I mean, you mentioned the narrative. This was obviously the place that ended his season, wasn't it, last season? So it's good to see him in as well. Topic and McLean, I think there's a nice balance there. And then obviously the two up top, Chris Goran and Sargent. I mean, that feels quite exciting as a duo, doesn't it, Pat? To have those two not just on the same pitch, but actually in partnership with each other at the top end of the pitch, because they're quite different as well in terms of their strengths.
They are, but what they're seemingly, albeit it's a smaller sample with Chris Garden in a Norwich shirt, but you look at his goal scoring record. I mean, I was staggered to see it was like 86 goal contributions in, I think it was 100 league games for Bromby. I mean, that Sargent levels of productivity. And if you can combine those two with their natural attacking instincts, but the broader picture there is, and it cuts to the heart maybe of the Nunes footballing dimension, is the creativity a factor, because those players, as good as they possibly are in the box, or definitely as they are in Sargent's case in the championship surroundings, they need the service, they need balls, quality balls fed through or coming in from wide areas. So it's that equation, isn't it? You've got those two now hopefully playing quite close together, and also from there, like Chris Garden with the ability to run on. If Sargent's going to come short and try and battle centre backs and get the first touch, you've got Chris Garden now in behind to carry that threat and stretch the play. But within that, they do need the service to be far better, far more consistent. And with lots of Jallo, Cernat, we can just sort of move through the gears. We've seen glimpses of him last season, what he can do when he's in a better, consistent vein of form. And obviously, Topic and McLean, that's an interesting blend as well. I think that's the first time they've been paired together. I'm right in saying, I think it has been. So now Matson's in the building. They will know they need to perform and look like a good unit if they're going to keep him out, because I think it will be moving forward, perming 2 from 3 in that area of the pitch.
Yeah, just to ask you about one, a few people asking about Oscar Schwartau, Jeff Mann, Robin as well on X. No Oscar Schwartau, anything in that? So again, the press conference was Wednesday. A lot has happened since then, and clearly they've had a couple more training sessions. So it could potentially be fitness related. I'm sure that's one you're not telling you how to do your job, but I'm sure you'll bowl that at Liam Manning post game.
I'll try if I remember. Yeah, in amongst all the other questions. But well, as you say, Wednesday there was no indication there was any fitness issues.
I did hear. I don't know if I should say this publicly, really, but I did hear a whisper. He might be one that obviously could go out on loan. I think, given the attacking talent and how young he is, you wouldn't. Would it be? And maybe I can turn this into a question. Would it be better for him at this stage, rather than being around a Norwich squad, to actually go somewhere and get games at this stage? Do you think? Still only 19, so a lot of time on his side.
Well, that's that will be the final decisions. But I'm sure there's positions that they've looked at in terms of individuals like him. One or two of the other McConville's on the bench today, but I mean he looks like an option that could be ripe to go and get some football. But then you've got the Shane Duffy situation. There's a lot of moving parts there over the next 24, 48 hours. But could I see Schwartau being allowed to maybe go out on a 6-month loan if it meant regular football? Yeah, I could see that, because the alternative is sat on the bench and maybe coming on for a few minutes. Matson now adds to that level of competition. So yeah, in that balancing act, that there's a player you like and you value and could be in time a good player in your 11. If that time isn't in the here and now, then maybe it does make more sense to go out and get some football. We'll obviously clear that up in terms of whether it's fitness related or whether it is maybe with a view. I mean, I thought it might be simply, the competitive element to get into this squad. You've seen that with, Macondas is on the bench, though, isn't he? Yeah. So, again, in terms of slots available on the bench, Jurasek's now back in the mix in terms of match day. He wasn't in the equation at the start of the season, and that maybe afforded Schwartau a path to the 20. So if Jurasek has now pushed himself up the pecking order, does it mean, by definition, he can only go with the 20? So Jurasek comes out of the equation. Schwartau comes out of the equation. So, yeah, we won't speculate too much, but the reality is there's probably a player in the round who at this stage isn't possibly that close to the 11 in terms of Liam Manning's thoughts. And if he's now not actually making benches as well, then, yeah, by all means, go and get him some loan football, yeah.
Lots of questions about the formation. Matt's saying it's not a 4-4-2. Certainly from what we've been told by people who would know this is that they're expecting it to be a 4. But again, I think with the feeling that it's going to be a hybrid, as these formations have been all season. I know there's been a lot of attention and focus on it, but that certainly is how it's going to, or the intention of how it's going to start. Let's bring you the Blackburn team. They are unchanged from last weekend. Here's how they line up. They've got Toff in goal, Abisu, Hyam, McLaughlin and Ribeiro as their back 4, Tronstad and Tavares as their midfield 2. They've got Cargboat and Hedges on either wing, with Todd Campbell captaining them this afternoon, and Ohashi up front. They've subs bench Goddard, Miller, Pickering, Wharton, Montgomery, Deneve, Henriksen, Morishita, who signed from Legia Warsaw this week, and Matt Targay, who I think was quite good in the game here in March for them. as well. So that's how they line up, unchanged for them, of course, off the back of what was a 3-0 victory against Hull last weekend. Paddy, in terms of that attacking lineup, I think we've kind of spoken about it already. But first championship start for Matthias Kvistgaard, probably felt overdue to some extent. Clearly, there's been some building him up, and he didn't have the longest pre-season campaign. A good opportunity, I guess, to get a look at him and Sargent, because as I said, it feels quite, and I know you spoke about this, but it feels quite good to see them as a duo, particularly in kind of looking for Strands to be optimistic about. If he could produce a performance today, that would be ideal for everyone, I think.
Kvistgaard, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, he is, just double checking, he is their headline summer signing in terms of value, and it doesn't feel like there's going to be any major inward additions from this point. So he was your marquee signing, particularly as we know the backstory. Even what they committed to in terms of his release fee was way below what his current market valuation was, and what clubs, notably Lons, I think, were willing to pay, and had almost agreed with Brombu. So you've effectively added an asset, 10, 11, 12, 13 million euro. He should be good enough, more than good enough, to come into a championship setting and show that level of quality. And as I touched on earlier, 86 goal contributions in 100 games, Superliga games for Brombu, one of the big clubs in Denmark. Full international now for his country over the past summer, played in European competition. That's a profile of player who should improve Norwich in the final third if they can get him into the right areas of the pitch and maximise what he's good at. And again, it feels like Sargent's going to remain in the building. They're the soundings as we tick down now to the closing hours of the window. So moving forward, at least between now and the January window, Sargent and Kvistgaard, and they feel like Norwich's attacking spearhead. And wouldn't it be great today, first time they've been paired in tandem in a championship environment, if you saw a small sample of what they could be together, both as a pair but as individuals. And if those two spark, then that could be one of the major factors for me in this starting to accelerate and a bit of momentum getting built alongside the process that's quite painful at the minute, this evolutionary good things, bad things, too many bad things, the odd good thing. If you start to see Sargent and Kvistgaard on fire, then you will know, if you're Liam Manning, if you're the Norwich fans, they can go home and away in the championship, and however they're playing as a collective, they've got those two at the front end of the pitch who will score goals.
There's been clearly a lot of talk about a certain midfielder and creativity, probably more generally, in that Norwich squad. I mean, that front four, I guess, Sienats, Sargent, Kvistgaard and Diallo, you would feel there was enough, providing obviously Norwich can get the ball to them, which is obviously probably the wider point that is being made, that there is probably enough there from an attacking sense that you would hope that quartet and obviously those behind them are capable of creating chances here this afternoon.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Jallo's the one, isn't he? He looks such an exciting player already, and there's been no real adaptation issues that I can see with him. What you liked last weekend against Borough, okay, the result went against him in the end, but his personality, he wanted to be the one, get me on the ball, keep giving me the service so I can attack their right back, and also, again, not one-dimensional in terms of just hugging the touchline as a wide option. No, he wanted to come in, he wanted to link the play, he wanted to get involved, he wanted to get shots off, and he had a great curling effort in that first half. It just went past the far post. We saw what he did previously in the League Cup at Watford. There's real purpose and dynamism, and as Manning keeps talking about, he doesn't want these robotic type of attacking players. He wants players to play off the cuff. There's a young man who can excite and will get those Norwich fans off their seat. So, again, in terms of positives to cling to, he is a big positive. And if he can start to build that understanding with a Sargent, with a Kvistgaard, and I mean, you go back to Vicarage Road, Sargent scores, it's Papajallo closing down the right back, getting to the byline, and then the composure to cut it across. That's the level of service I'm sure if you're Josh Sargent, if you're Matthias Kvistgaard, you want, and not just from him, of course. Ante needs to step up as well, and they need something coming from the middle of the park. And Topic, I think, has shown enough. If okay, he might want to badge him as a holding player, but I think he's a bit more than that. You can see he has those attacking instincts. He wants to drive from the middle of the park, and so if he can get himself in and around the box as well, then hopefully that can be part of that puzzle to unlock, those two attacking players.
Pelle Mattsson on the bench as well. Hopefully an opportunity to get a look at him today at some stage. I think we saw, obviously spoken a lot about the Nunez situation and probably not a lot about Pelle Mattsson really. And it's going to be interesting to see what sort of player Norwich City have got there, and whether that's in keeping maybe with the type of midfield balance that we've seen from Liam Manning. But I mean, you said it earlier, as you look to the future, I guess the aim for him is to try and get himself into that team alongside what we presume will be Miko Topic. We know how long they've pursued him for pretty much all summer actively, but of course I'm sure he's been on their radar for a lot longer than that. And there is, I think, amid all of the Nunez theatre, I guess, and drama around that move, there's a lot of excitement, the fact they've been able to get Pelle Mattsson here in the end, however they've done it in whatever circumstances.
Circuitous route, Connor, yeah, but he
took the scenic route.
He did take the scenic route, yeah. I mean, I have to confess, I haven't seen enough of him to be able to opine, like those individuals who can disappear down YouTube and come back and talk about his cuts and what he's shown in a Silkeborg shirt. But you look at the profile, you look at his age, you look at the amount of games he's played, the dynamism, that's what I like. I just feel watching Norwich too many times in the past few seasons, they look laboured and one-paced in key areas of the pitch, centre mid being a key area, and it's such an important that element of any championship game for me, that athleticism and that drive and that energy, because the quality and the technical ability should be what separates you out. But if you don't have those other elements and able to go if you're out of possession, go and close down the opposition, turn them over high up the pitch, if you're in possession, to move the ball quickly, to drive through the thirds, you need those elements for me as your baseline before you then add on the quality and the technical ability and the tactical know-how. And it feels from everything you read and hear about him that he has that drive and that dynamism, that energy. So that's what I'm looking forward to, seeing him inject that into a Norwich centre mid. Because if he can do that, then you're getting the ball quicker to Jallow, you're getting it quicker to Cernach, you're getting Norwich higher up the pitch, you're getting in behind and breaking the lines, and then you've got Sargent and Quistgaard, and it all should be knitting together, hopefully, with the addition of, which is what he clearly is, a very highly rated, highly regarded young player, and a player who, as they said in the signing quotes, have tracked for quite a considerable amount of time. So, as with all of these things, lots of new business. Window closes Monday, but I think it'll probably be down the track before we can definitively say Norwich's recruitment has been spot on in the round. There'll be hits, there'll be misses, there'll be players who adapt quicker than others. But at this stage, it's really suck it and see. Effectively, we won't really know probably until we get into like the 2026 part of this season whether these players are really the real deal and are really going to drive up Norwich's overall levels in this division. And if they don't, then as we've kind of revision re-looked at the 21 window before they went back to the Premier League, and that was deemed an unmitigated failure, but that was Zolish and that was Sargent, wrong time, right players maybe, and you just hope that this time around they've got these players on the upward curve and that they can come in and impact it this season, not we need a season for them to bed in and it'll be next season before we see the best of Mattsson, the best of Topic, the best of Quistgaard. For where this club are now pitching their ambition, it needs to be this season.
Agreed. Let's sort of turn our attentions then to today, and I think we both agree, Pay. Look, we've spoken enough about a certain individual, so I don't think we need to recover old ground there. But clearly, it's been a busy week, a week full of bombshells and drama and emotion and high-level feelings and all of those type of things, and understandably so. And today is the first opportunity that Norwich have to try and fix some of that narrative, to change some of that narrative, to turn some of that narrative. And I think, we had this conversation earlier about sometimes these things can galvanise a group. They can push a group together, and that can help in terms of getting a result. So is that the hope now, that actually Liam Manning can utilise the Nunez gate, if that's what we want to call it, and utilise it to be a power for good, I suppose, here today. And we know that away end, which I can see filling up with yellow shirts. Not at the moment. No, we can try and find out. But that away end is going to be obviously packed and full of Norwich City fans who just want to see something today, don't they? Just to try and turn the wheel and to change that narrative and inject some positivity into it as well. And you said it earlier, you think about where everything was post Portsmouth, how quickly it's probably eroded. But look, it can swing again as quickly, particularly in this league, as we both know.
We do, yeah. And I and particularly because this is the final game now for a fortnight shutdown, and we know we don't need to dredge it all up again, but the mood isn't great now off the back of the last 2 days, but also, 2 home defeats, a feeling that it hasn't really knitted together maybe as the more optimistic elements of the fan base and us in the media and maybe even inside the club hoped it would come together. That hasn't been the case. So for all those factors, positive result today, signs of Fiskgarden and Sargent, maybe Matson later in the piece, maybe a step forward from Papagiallo, and then you can roll into a 2 weeks. I think it gives them a bit of space, a bit of clear air as a club. What you don't want is it to feel it'll come on top of them again, particularly if it goes the other way and they don't just get beat today, but the performance is patchy again, and lots of the elements that haven't been rectified so far resurface again today. All of that off the back of these last few days would just bring the scrutiny up another notch, and we'd have 2 weeks to sit and stew on it, and that's not a good place for anybody to be at the start of still relatively early what we hope is going to be a season of real progress now on the pitch and a real concerted top 6 push. It could still turn out to be that, even from relatively inauspicious beginnings, but for everybody's sake, it needs a positive outing today, and just a sense of a bit of respite and something to look forward to the other side of the international break. Really, that's what we all need. We all need a bit of rekindling a bit of that pre-season optimism and a bit of excitement, rather than what it feels like at the moment, which is it's sort of thin gruel, and it's almost having to endure. Meanwhile, look at the cackling neighbours over the fence, thinking they've got the cat with the cream. So
look at Borough as well, by the way. They're beating Sheffield United 1-0. That would continue their perfect start, wouldn't it?
It would. And I still maintain what I said on the Instagram live. I don't think there's a standout team in this league at this stage. You see Birmingham getting turned over last night. So if that is the case, then all Norwich have to do at this stage is just keep themselves in and around it and just keep nudging it forward. And today would be a good time, really, off the back of this week. Just to reinforce that, okay, it's been rocky, it's been a little bit bumpy, but the road ahead is looking a bit brighter.
Absolutely. Will it be?
Yes, 2-1 Norwich.
Yeah, I'm going 2-1 as well. I think after the week that we've had, we could all use a win, and I hate to reference this earlier, I hate to go back to Dean Smith, really, but he said sometimes winning can be the best sticking plaster, and it won't change probably anything that's happened in the last 48 hours or so, but a win makes everything and everyone feel better, doesn't it, as well? And that's the aim, and especially for those guys to our right who have made the long journey up and will just want to see something to hold on to. Let's hope they get that this afternoon. Thank you very much for watching. Pinken.com, the place to go. You can go to our website, find out details of how you can win a Norwich City home shirt by subscribing. We've got an offer at the moment as well. It's £18 for 12 months of Norwich City coverage. You, of course, get all our exclusive content on that as well. We are at every game and following every kick and every transfer as well in the next 48 hours that may or may not happen as well. So, that's the place to go and look. Thank you very much for watching. This man will be speaking to Liam Manning later. I suspect there'll be quite a few of you quite interested in what he has to say about the events of this week. So tune into that, and we will see you all very later.